Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to this game's tutorial. Today, we are tackling a little bit more of our research. So as you can tell, well, first we changed the description of this, which is something we did manually, but it doesn't really matter. As you can tell, now we have this down here. The text is actually being formatted as an actual, readable text, so we know that this is 5 minutes. If we click on start, it actually turns blue, and here's what we see. So we see this actual countdown. Again, being formatted by the same exact function. On top of that, we also did the progress bar, so as you can tell, it goes up depending on the time, or I mean the ratio of this research completion. So that's pretty much what we're doing today, guys. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so in today's episode we are fixing this thing. So you see how we have this number going up, but we actually like to have a progress bar as well fitting itself behind this very thing. We also have this number down here that's pretty much saying 300, which means 5 minutes in float, but it's really hard to tell when you're just a user. You don't really want to be doing the maths all the time. So we are going to be doing just that today. Let's start with the first one, the first step. We are going to turn this into an actual progress bar. Now, I don't know if you actually see the difference here in between the colors, because, I don't know, it feels like my recording software is not picking the colors right. But we've got a bar. This bar, in fact. This one thing. We are going to go on it, the research progress, right click, create a new UI image. And now we're gonna have another image on top of that. What we're gonna do with this image is we're gonna make sure that it pretty much assumes the whole scale of its parent. So we'll do that by clicking on the anchor up here, stretch on both axes, and put everything back on 0. This way it is now the same exact size and the same exact position if you let it go. And we are going to rename this, so this is the progress bar, and we'll just put it above the text so we can actually see the text like this. Also change the color for maybe some kind of yellow. I'm not sure about that, but whichever color you like the most. And we are going to do one more thing to it. So what's going to happen in the code is we're going to be moving this value over here in the scale x. So you see how we have a 1, 1, 1 vector? We are going to be putting the x on the ratio, so the completion ratio. Depending on which effect you're going for, you want to be moving the pivot point of that bar. So right now, as you can tell, we're going from the center and we're just expanding. That might be what you're going for, so if it is, just leave it like that. If you're actually going for a bar that starts from the very left side and goes to the right side, or vice versa, you are going to need to change the anchor. Now up here, if I click back on my anchor and I hold the shift click, if I hold shift and I click here, my anchor is now over here on this side. And when I move the scale, it's actually giving us this effect. So that's pretty much all we need in order to make this bar work. So let's go ahead and just implement it. Now we need to actually get a reference to that. There's multiple ways to get the reference. You could go on your research container, declare a new value, then say get components in children. You get it at the 1, 2, 3, I'm just counting the amount of image, 4 and 5. You would be getting it at the 4th index, so the 5th value inside of the get component array. Or you could just not worry too much about that, put it public and simply drag and drop it. And you know what, I am going to be lazy and put it public. So public image progress bar, go back in my game over here, it should pop. I just take my progress bar, drop it here. Let's also make sure we save the prefab. And here we go, we now have a reference to that very progress bar, and we can actually play with the size. So we are going to be doing just that in the code. Let's go down to our update container function. Whenever the research has not been started yet, we are going to say progress bar.rectTransform.local scale is equal to a new vector 3, 0, 1, 1. So we basically hide it at this point. We just make the scale in x 0, so we're not going to be able to see the graphics. Now, as far as while it's actually playing over here, let's copy our line, and instead of saying 0, we're going to be putting the ratio in there, because we already calculate that ratio. So this is going to give us, say, a value of 0.5 when we are halfway through our research, and that's what we want. And finally, let's copy it again in the finish. In the finish, you obviously want to be putting this on u vector 3 1 1 1 or vector 3 dot 1, which is the same. Let's actually test this out really quickly. Going to hit play. Click reset save. So now we should be starting out fresh, and we should not actually be able to see the bar. So here it is, it's not visible. I press on start, and it slowly gets filled in as time goes. Now this is a 5-minute research, we're not going to wait through the whole thing, but in theory it should work. Okay, so we've got all of this working. The next step we'd actually like to take today is to actually change the duration of it. So let's go back really quickly. This thing here, the 300. I like this to actually be updated every single time while it's in progress. And when it's not in progress, when it's either not started or finished, I'd like to display the amount of time the research is actually supposed to last, but in a format that I'll be able to read super quickly. So to do that, I will create a function that takes in a float that I'll be using as my time, and that converts it into some kind of string that I'm able to read super fast. So like the one we have in the preview over here, so 1 hour 00 minutes, something like that. To do this, I need to be putting it somewhere that I'll be able to access from not only the game but also the hub, because I plan on having this kind of formatting as well in the hub. So I'll be putting it somewhere in the stats helper, and it's going to be some kind of function, helper function. So at the very bottom here in my stats helper, I will declare a public string get time float, actually get time string from float, something like that. In parameter we're getting the time, and we're also getting a boolean that I'll call include seconds. So sometimes we don't actually want to include the seconds because it's too precise, it takes too much space. And sometimes we actually do want to see the seconds. So that boolean is going to control that. So let's start by declaring a new empty string like this. We're also going to return it at the end. And in between this is where we do the actual calculations. So this is for the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. Let's actually put our if statement right away. So if we include the seconds, we actually do something here. Okay. So I'm also going to declare something else really quickly that I call remains is equal to time. So the time that we get in parameter. Or do we actually need to do that? We'll find out. So in hours, the formula is really simple. So we go like our string plus equal, and then we got to give it the amount of hours there is in the time we have. So we're going to start by casting remains divided by 3600 as a string. Now 3600 is basically the amount of second there is in an hour, so 60 times 60, which gives us 3.6k. So that's the amount of seconds there is an hour, and we're going to be casting it as an int. So if it's not above 1, then we're going to get 0. If it's not above 2, we're going to get 1, and so on. You know, it's going to get rid of every single digit after the decimal. So this way we only get it if there is an actual hour inside of our time. Then we can cast it as a string using the toString, and we can also send it a format if we wish. Now, as far as the hour goes, I simply just want my hours to be laid down one next to each other. So if there is 10 hour, I like to see number 10. If there is 5 hour, I only want to see the digit 5. I do not want to see 0, 5 or something like that. So I'll just be leaving my toString like this. We're also going to add a small character at the end that says hour, and we're good. Now just after that, I'll deduce what I just used. So remains, I guess this as an int, 3.6k, so the amount of hours we get, times the amount of seconds in an hour. So we actually reduce it from remains, and we can now use it in minutes. And minutes is pretty much the same exact thing. So all we're going to be saying is r plus equal, we cast this as an int, remains divided by 60. Let's wrap this up again so we can do our toString plus m. And this one is actually going to take in parameter in toString. So say we have 5 minutes. I want to see 0, 5. I don't want to see only the number 5. I want to see a 0 in front of it. And all we're going to be saying for that to happen, quit! And all we're going to be saying for that to happen is to send in this very string as a parameter. Cool. Next one, so if we do include the seconds, this one's very simple. All we got to do is say r plus equal, and we do times not time divided. It's actually time modulo 60. So the remaining after 60. That toString, again, I'd like to have at least 2 digits, plus s. Let's give it a quick try. I am going to go under my tower script, and in the start, you don't have to do this by the way, but in the start I will try it out. So let's do debug.log stats helper that instance.get time string from float, and we send it say a time. So let's do an hour 35 minutes, that is 5.7, and let's actually not include the seconds, so let's say false. Right now in my debug.log down here in my console, I should be able to see an hour and 35 minutes, and here it is. Let's crank that number up a little bit by say 32 seconds, and let's also display the seconds. We should get an hour, 35 minutes, and 32 seconds. And that's it. So this is working fine. We can remove it and actually go ahead and change it inside of our research containers. Alright, so first one over here. Whenever it is it has not been started, I will do stat helper, that instance, get time string from float. We're getting info dot research time, and we are sending, do we want the seconds? We don't want the seconds while it has not been started, so it's only going to say 5 minutes basically for this one. Let's copy this over, or you know what, before we copy, we're going to be changing the color. So whenever this text has not been started, this research has not been started, let's make sure the color is actually say color.black. Then I will copy these 2 lines, put them down then at the finish one. So we've got it in the start, we've got it in the finish. It's the exact same thing for both. Now in the progress, while it's actually running, we're going to be swapping things a little bit. So let's start with the color. The text color is going to be say a blue while it's actually going down. And I am actually going to include the seconds in this one. And we're going to be changing this very research time. This is a research time. This is always the same thing. Whether the research is running or not, this is always 300 in this case. What I'd like to have is the time remaining to that research. Now this is going to be the duration left on the research, so I need to get the amount of seconds there is left to that research. To do this, we will take info research time, so the full amount of the research, in this case 300. We're going to do minus research time again, so 300 minus 300, but this one we'll put it inside the parentheses and we'll do times ratio. That way we have the amount of time that has been the amount of second that has been waited since the very beginning of that research. This way we should actually have everything work, and also the color is going to be blue in this case. We are going to go over our game and actually test this out. So going to reset the save, we should be fresh. Go under research, we've got a 5-minute research that is working just fine. Let's hit play, or start I mean. And as you can tell, now the number goes down, and this is being updated every second. So this is the number we get, and it just keeps going down like that. I'm actually going to change this so we can test out the actual end of this, so the actual completed state. I'll put this on 60 seconds, which is equivalent to a minute. And I will also be right back really quickly. Yeah. Okay, so we're about to be done, and we're also going to lose at the same time, so that's boring. But if we check out this bar only, it is saying that this is completed. We have the completed feedback here, and the time went back to black. The amount of time that this research is a minute. So everything works fine. We also hit in the seconds, and everything is pretty much okay now. Alright. So there's one more thing that I'd like to address before we finish this, is the description of that. It says normal attack now deals splash damage. Now obviously this is not what the tradesman thing does, the tradesman research does, so I pretty much just forgot to do it last episode. We have the, where's it at? The description over here, and it should actually match with whichever is your research. In this case, tradesman. Let's actually put a definition to that. Say, you get 10% more gold on selling items. Now, I'm really bad in English, please don't mind all my spelling errors. On selling items, like this. But it's basically just to tell you that the research description are going to be stuff you put in manually. You could also be putting it in a switch case statement, but really, what's the point when you can just put it here? And yeah. So we're pretty much done with today's episode. In the next one, we're going to be tackling the whole cost thing, and we're also going to be try to be putting 2 icons in there, because we got the gold cost and we also got the loot cost. So we're going to have to redo our level up button a little bit. Now, level up button is a weird word. Our buy button is going to have to change in terms of the structure of that. We're going to have to include icons to it. So it's going to be a lot of UI work. And we'll see at that point. But that is pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you learned something. If you did, please leave me a like. Really appreciate that. If any question or comment, please leave them on my Facebook page, which you can find in the description below. And other than that, please subscribe for more tutorials like these, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.